Hello, everybody. I'm Matthew Wynn, podcast host of Leadership and Culture in Healthcare, podcast about everything to do with leadership and culture. And we're in our series on local government, local authority leaders and movers and shakers. And this week, I am joined by Trevor Holden. Trevor, why don't you introduce yourself, explain to everybody who you work for, and maybe how did you get to be that chief executive in the first place?
Matthew, really good to see you again. And thanks for this opportunity to engage with you. So I am the huge privilege of being the managing director for two fiercely independent district councils in the heart of Norfolk. So I'm the managing director for Broadland District Council and for South Norfolk District Councils, two separate councils, but we brought together over the last 5 years the paid service, moved to a new headquarters. So we're a single officer entity delivering to the two councils. You asked me how I got here. Well, an interesting journey. So my primary career was as a Royal Air Force officer, 26 years in the Royal Air Force, and decided to look for something different to do. And local government was that something different. Having thought I'd done all the fun stuff in life in the Royal Air Force, I couldn't have been more wrong. Local government is such a great leadership opportunity, working with other public sector leaders across the whole of the public sector delivery regime. I was the chief exec at Breckland for 3 years, went to Luton, which was where we first met. Such a super diverse community, was there for a decade, having thought I'll be there for 3 years. Really good fun delivering in that community before the opportunity then to come back to my home patch, which found me at Broadland and South Norfolk.
Wow, so before we get into how you work as a managing director, just explain to people, what is a district council? So in these podcasts, we've had people who have been from unitary councils. Just help people who listen to this understand what's this district council? What's it all about? What does it do? What's it responsible for, etc.?
Yeah, brilliant. So previously at Luton, unitary chief exec for 10 years. So good understanding of that unitary piece. I'm coming back to district land. District is all the bits and pieces which are closest to the communities that we serve. So whether that's the street scene, people go, well, you lift the bins. I prefer to tell a story that says, actually, when you woke up this morning in bed, you probably woke up in a house, which is there because the planners said there could be a house there. The standard of the house was built through building control, inspecting it and making it sure it was safe for you to inhabit. The bed that you bought, you might have bought from the local economy. Well, we do economic development. When you go downstairs and you open the fridge, well, we do food inspection and food safety. When you open the front door, the street scene and everything you see in it is because the planners said that's the way it should be. And it's clean and tidy because our environmental services make sure that it's clean and tidy. If you're unfortunate enough to have a dispute with your neighbours, it's our teams that come out and talk to people and say, actually, can we help resolve your concerns and challenges at a really local level? If you're unfortunate enough to be down on your uppers and you need support back into work, or you need support in terms of financing things, or you have a real challenge in terms of food in the fridge, etc., it's our community connectors that go out and join together the dots to help people make sense, as well as making sure we collect the revenues for council tax and business rates on behalf of the other collection authorities. So I would say that there are no parts of your daily routine or life that are not touched by local government and in particular district councils.
So that's really interesting because it's describing an organization that is some of the woven architecture of everything we assume happens, but actually is delivered through your offices and through your teams.
Yeah, a lot of what we do, if we're really successful, should be invisible to you, because it's universal services that are delivered at a local level, working with our town and parish councils as well to make sure that stuff happens. It's a really exciting place to be. as well as making those big decisions around where new developments are going to be and how things are going to happen, being at a granular level, able to support families when they need support, street by street, family by family. You'd look at the range of services and go, well, if you were commissioning a business, none of this stuff fits together. But as soon as you put a citizen in the middle, it all fits together because they're the things that make life work.
Yeah. A previous conversation on this in this series talked about an eye-watering amount of statutory responsibilities for local government. I think the figure was 1,300 different statutory responsibilities for a unitary organisation. Not to put you on the spot, knowing you will probably know this anyway, but in a district, how many of those kind of would be yours versus a county council that people may be more au fait with because of education or social care? Is it a 50-50 split, or, I mean, where would that line probably be drawn?
Yeah, so having been a unitary chief and responsible for the whole panoply of service delivery, realistically, our unitary functions that we don't do at a district level are social care, but absolutely we do social care through a whole range of other things. But what we don't do is social work. We don't do education, and we don't do highways in terms of highways infrastructure. Everything else that is done in a unitary setting is the stuff that districts do. So the complexity of service delivery within a district environment is absolutely there. And is it up close and personal with the residents that we serve? It absolutely is.
And so one of the things that's distinctly different between the NHS and local government is the role of councillors, the elected members. So you're there to, as I understand it, to support the decisions of your politicians to enact what they want to do. Tell us how that pans out in leadership terms, because that means I imagine you must be straddling a whole bunch of national must-dos from government, things coming from your local citizens, and then you've got the political dynamic to say there's a mandate and this must be delivered. As managing director, you're sitting in the middle of all that. What's that like? What's it like in being a leader amongst that kind of that dynamic?
Yeah, so I was talking to some colleagues the other day, because amongst my other responsibilities, I'm the lead chief executive for district councils across England. And I was speaking to some colleagues the other day around the challenges that we're all facing in terms of constant change, particularly around devolution and local government reorganisation. My riposte to those challenges is there's never been a better time to be in public sector leadership. If someone was saying to you, actually, we want to rewrite the way public services are delivered to the resident, both to deliver better value for money, but more importantly, to deliver better value services to our communities, what a privilege to be in a leadership function and role when you've got that kind of agenda. And all of us across the public sector, whether that's in health, whether that's in education, whether that's in local authority, unitary, county or district, should be grasping the baton and meeting that challenge head on to make sure we are co-designing, redesigning public service delivery in a way that makes sense, not just for today, but for the next 50 years, because these change agendas, I know health is constantly going through change, local government, the big change agendas happen once every 50 years. So we've got to have a big eye on the future and what delivery looks like. Do we work for a range of different masters? Yes, absolutely. We've got things that you touched on earlier, statutorily required to deliver. So our local authority councillors can influence those around the margins, but they're statutory responsibilities. Local authority agendas set by working with the members to say, here's the stuff we want to do in our place. And yes, we're close enough to our residents to be absolutely influenced by residents in tempering or shaping that agenda as well. It makes it a really, really exciting place to work.
That dynamic, let's just drill into that dynamic on the political elements just for a second, though, because that means election cycles, doesn't it? That means, I think, probably every 5 years or maybe quicker, you've got people who you're accountable to up for re-election. That always brings in a dynamic of promise of this is what the public want, this is what I'm going to deliver. Therefore, there must be quite a lot of pressure around things like the annualized budget setting, but also that point that you said, if you're trying to plan on a longer term horizon, but you've also then got people who you're accountable to are on a shorter mandate.
Yeah.
How does that manifest in terms of therefore being at the center of that and being employed to deliver change?
So I don't think we're any different to any other sector. And I'll take it back to my time in the Royal Air Force, where you kind of got, as a senior officer, you got posted every 2 years. And you always found yourself delivering the things your predecessor had designed and designing things that your successor was going to deliver. So that change agenda is true, I think, in any sector. And I'm sure is probably true in the health sector in the same way. But what it does is it keeps you really, really honest, because you have to validate, well, okay, where's our revenue budget going? Where's our capital budget going? Are we delivering the projects in the way that they need to be? And that gets a mandate from the electorate every 4 years, because the political parties will go forward locally with their manifestos. These are the things that we think are important. What do you, the electorate, think? So actually, I quite like that level of local scrutiny to what we're doing. Does the course change? Yes, the course can change, but a lot of the time it's about the way you're delivering rather than necessarily what you're delivering. And so I think that political element at a local council is much more about the politics of place than the politics of party in what we do.
And just explain that a little bit more. The politics of place being what?
What's best for the place? What's best for the community? When I first came into local government, I thought, why are these things all so different? Why have you got local government at a level so close to people? Surely it's all the same. Au contraire, as I found when I moved to Luton. Luton's a very, very different community and a very, very different offer, and requires something different from its local council than, say, South Norfolk does, or indeed its neighbour Broadland requires. So it is very different. It's very place centric in terms of whether it's urban, whether it's rural, what the local economy is. And it's that politics of place that's really, really important on how you deliver things. And that keeps it fresh and real when you have elections every 4 years.
Sure. And you touched on this, and the government have published I think, white paper on devolution. So ostensibly, the world of local government will, apart from those that are already in a unitary and have a mayor, will never be the same again if this goes through the course. That will have a big implication for you and colleagues in Norfolk and other district councils and the network that you chair, and also for the county council. That's going to be quite a difficult period to navigate through, because organizational change always creates noise, it creates uncertainty, it creates displacement, doesn't it? What are you thinking as you embark on that journey? What's going to be really important in how you lead that?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, we're all, whatever sector we work in, we're leaders of people, and it's a people agenda, whether that's the people we lead within the organization or the people that we serve in our local communities. And there was one word missing for me in your descriptor of wholesale change. It presents opportunity. It presents opportunity to rethink the way we deliver services. I recall a few years ago, there was a speech by Matthew Taylor, who touched on this very thing around local delivery, and how, in spite almost of the strategic leadership, our local delivery agents, be that in health or local government, were coalescing around a problem and fixing problems. And this is a chance for us to reset and realign the strategic agenda to make sure it absolutely supports those people who are delivering at the front line. So I think, yes, it does cause disruption. I think it's a huge responsibility of leadership to make sure we're listening to what our communities want and what our staff at the front line are telling us they need to give them the best tools to do the job. And we shouldn't be too wedded to organizations. Organizations are just the way resources are brigaded to deliver things. And if somebody said, well, actually, there's conversation around the National Care Agency. Well, what does that look like? And should we be worried about where resources go to deliver that? I suspect we shouldn't. We should be more focused on how do we collectively deliver the best value for the public purse and the best outcomes for the communities that we serve, which is why I say, yes, it's disrupting, but it's a really exciting agenda and one where we need to collectively co-design and co-deliver.
Mm. And so I've forgotten after not speaking to you for a while how opportunities always are the first thing Trevor Holden always says, and optimism in that respect. So on that point, what do you think is going to be the most crucial design and the best and the biggest opportunity as we go through this change? And I guess I'm putting that in a frame, Trevor, of not just about how local authorities work, but how we work in the public sector realm to support our local residents. So if Trevor Holden was in charge, well, here's the thought. If Trevor Holden was in charge of how all this altered, but on the public sector footprint, Trevor Holden for mayor is coming to mind here, but let's just come back from that for a second. If Trevor Holden was in charge, what would be your ambition of what we might want to design together?
Yeah, so first off, and I think we need to get away from hierarchical structures. We almost need to turn the pyramid upside down because the important bit is the front line and how we deliver. We need to make sure, and it's oft said, but we need to make sure that our staff are, and I'm going to say, truly empowered. But I had the real pleasure of meeting a bunch of three young men who rode the Pacific and broke the world record. And they said, we've got a really, really small team. And we thought that the idea of empowering people was a little bit passive. And we couched a phrase of everybody has a responsibility to lead. And I think we need to engender in the front line of our delivery, everybody has a responsibility to lead. It happens every day, whether it's my bin men making decisions over health and safety, whether it's paramedics making decisions around whether they take someone into hospital or not, but really giving people that to the tools to and the responsibility to lead. I think it's about exploiting opportunities of getting rid of financial artificial boundaries. We are all, in the main, deliverers of services funded through public funds. For me, the Better Care Fund was a really, really good idea of breaking down some of those barriers and saying, actually, there's a pot of money that collectively we can make a difference with in a place. I think if devolution's done well, we'll have more things under the umbrella and purview of locally elected mayors and more stuff under the purview of local councils. Not so that local councils can seize control, but so that we can coordinate and conduct the services that we collectively deliver in a way that makes sense to our residents and our frontline staff and agents who are delivering on our behalf. I think it's a really, really exciting agenda. Once we get people through the emotional journey of stuff's going to change, right, okay, now we're past that. How do we make sure that change is one of real positivity and sustainability to deliver the right outcomes for people?
And there are some, I presume, some real specifics where you see there will be, and you, I guess, are seeing the opportunity to design that better. So I guess I'm thinking between local government and the NHS, we share the responsibility of people's health and well-being. And you started with saying lots of that's the role of district councils about the built environment, about the standards we do, but it's probably also everything to do with housing stock. It's everything to do with leisure facilities. It's how those leisure facilities align with people's ill health and the ability to get well. what are the practicalities you're seeing amongst all that you could see a better future if we're redesigning this?
Yeah, so it's everything along that continuum from, we're investing in fitness centers. We're absolutely making sure that we're designing healthy places for people to live. That's the genesis of the current model of local government, formed from the Industrial Revolution, because people needed to have skills, they needed to have good places to live, and they needed good public health. The opportunity for us is to build on some of the really, really great stuff that goes much more granular than that. So I've got members of staff today working in GP practices. They are socially prescribing. They're taking referrals from GPs, from the practice nurse, or people phoning in direct. They're where non-clinical interventions or non-medical interventions are going to give people a quicker and more sustainable route to health. And how do we make sure that fabric of our community, whether it's recommending the bowls club, whether it's giving someone free gym membership, whether it's somebody just going round and going, actually, we need to help you with all this stack of red bills because the thing that's debilitating you is the ability not to deal with the financial position you're in. Or actually, you're still grieving the loss of a loved one 18 months ago. We need to help you bring out it's the normal life anxieties that, if untreated through social prescribing, cause people to come to a more clinical need or intervention. For me, that's the really, really exciting stuff. And you could say, well, society used to do all those things on its own. We are where we are in society, and we've got a unique opportunity to make non-clinical interventions through health and local government working hand in glove to deliver the best outcomes for people.
And as ever, there will be pockets where this is done extremely well. And probably even within your council, your 2 council areas, I bet you've got areas where you can say this works really well here, but it's actually really, really tough over here. And then we're both sitting in Norfolk at the moment. If we think about, is it happening in Great Yarmouth? Is it happening in Fakenham? Is it happening in Kings Lynn? There will be absolute differences. How do you sit there as a leader then thinking, how do we make that a reality for all rather than the pockets of excellence?
So I think the winds of that change are absolutely in the ASEP. Those things are happening across more and more places. And that's where we need to get the strategic alignment in line with what's actually happening on the ground. So I think those things are happening in places where people are not aware they're happening. And I think good strategy needs to be informed and in part led by what the art of the possible is, what's actually being delivered on the ground. But it's that mindset. It goes back to everybody's got a responsibility to lead. When I'm talking to my team, I always say to them, look, actually, the rules are there for the guidance of wise men and the obedience of fools. Is that a license to be reckless? No, of course it's not. But it is a license to do the right thing and do what needs to be done within the opportunities that we have at our disposal. So, for example, I was with one of our social prescribers a few weeks ago, and they took a call from a resident who had no food in the fridge, their power was turned off, and they had a stack of red bills. By the end of the day, my social prescriber had been round, the power was back on, there was food in the fridge, and the red bills had been taken to somebody in our team who does financial advice to properly look at them and say, how do we wrestle you out of this financial problem? And that's not through saying, well, we'll write off your bills for you, but that's proper conversations with the people who own the debt. And it's those things where we can really, really and should really, really make a difference. And I think it's growing. I think the strategic thinkers have got to catch up with what's being delivered.
Because let's just take that. That person is going to be anxious. That person is going to be potentially paralyzed about work, about family life, about everything else, because nothing is working for them in terms of how they function. And I suppose I'm sitting there thinking, Trevor, that's brilliant. But the consistency of saying, does every local resident have that ability, is so crucial, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we're seeing some emerging thinking, aren't we, about neighbourhood health environments. And I think that's absolutely critical. And I think that is where we're starting to build on what good practice looks like. And for me, that neighbourhood health environment, and I know there's been some conversation recently about government saying, well, you will have a named GP. That we're a long way from where we used to be in terms of the GP knew the family and knew all the ins and outs. But steps that take us back towards to use the management jargon, a single view of the resident is going to be really, really helpful. And we can exploit data and technology to help us with that. And again, that's another area where we can do much, much more within the resources we've got available. If we look at how do we have one view of the family, one view of the citizen, and how do we make sure that our interaction isn't a diary full of different agencies going to see that family. Rather, it's a couple of well-targeted interventions informed by all of the agencies and the data we hold. Building on the stuff that Louise Casey led around stronger families. All of that stuff is pertinent today, more pertinent today, perhaps, than it was when it was first envisaged.
And as a leader, if I look at the notes I've made during this conversation so far, you've traversed across the responsibilities of local government. You've dipped into things that technically are things that other people say that's a county council's responsibility, but no, Trevor Holden has said it's my job at the most local level. Forget the Better Care Fund being a county council issue; it's my issue. You've talked about your staff being involved in healthcare. You've talked about changing the way the local consumer and local resident kind of lives their lives. You're a rounded public sector leader that travails and traverses across every single boundary in many respects, then, aren't you?
I have got a really, really super team. And if you unlock your team, they will take you to places you wouldn't have thought of. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. We have a mantra of no hierarchy within our organization. We've got about just shy of 800 staff. There is no hierarchy. The people who are best at the job are the people who are doing the job. And that unlocks massive diversity of thinking and energy and drive to just go out and do stuff and make it happen. Whether that's our apprentices who finished sixth form or didn't go to sixth form, whether that's our graduates, whether that's our mid-career people who are going, do you know what? I've always fancied having a go at this. There was something the other day around, local government needs to get better at failing. Because we constrain ourselves and we always go for pursuit of, all got to be okay because there's embarrassment if you go wrong. Every success is built on the back of failure, and we need to be better at allowing people to go and explore and do stuff. You'd be amazed and excited at what people deliver. It's not what's in your mind, Matthew, or my mind. It's about the collective and how do we deliver stuff that really, really makes a difference.
And that's brilliant. And I'm going to unpack that a little bit about how you've got to that kind of position, if I can. But I know there'll be people listening saying, great, no hierarchy, but how does one manage, as the managing director of two councils, how does one manage the balance of accountability to deliver with no hierarchy? I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to say right now, but how are you managing those things?
Yeah, so term accountability, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, you say, well, you're accountable for that. That almost sounds like, oh, by the way, I'm waiting for you to trip up. Actually, accountability sits with me. And my job, when I sit down and have my discussions with my team leaders, my assistant directors or directors, it's about what are the blockers? What are the things that are stopping you doing what you do? Because my accountability is to deal with those blockers, not to tell you how to do your job, but how to unlock those blockers and things that are causing you disquiet. Maybe when you get to a certain age, you provide some insight and wisdom to some of those things, because there really is nothing new under the sun. It's just the way things are delivered. But I see accountability not as a threat. but as an opportunity. And it goes back to everybody's got a responsibility to lead. If somebody is reckless, then clearly they're going to have to deal with the consequences of that recklessness. But the more you engender trust, the more you engender open conversations. Actually, I haven't found many people who want to bounce out of bed in the morning with the pure and deliberate attempt to do a bad job. They just don't generally exist. Most people bounce out of bed because they're excited at public sector delivery and they want to make a difference to the people they serve at whatever level in the organization.
And of course, your accountability becomes easier to pull off if everybody takes responsibility for what they're doing, and therefore that becomes self-fulfilling, doesn't it?
But we have to create the circumstances where they can put their hands up and go, this has gone wrong. And then, okay, well, what do we learn from the fact that it's gone wrong? And where do we go next? What we can't do is chastise somebody when something's gone wrong, when it was done with good intent and properly informed and researched. Not a license to be reckless, but absolutely a license to try stuff and see what works. Who thought that we would have had local government officers working out of GP practices? But it works really, really well.
So, Trevor, and I won't be the first person to observe this with you. I know that you may be an unusual leader in local government. I can tell by your grin that that's been leveled at you many times. But how, given your perspective on that you've been describing to us on this podcast, I mean, let me not many local government or leaders. And sorry, I will say executive leaders as opposed to elected leaders would say their organizations aren't the most important thing. It's actually what they deliver is important. You didn't quite say that, but that's the intent. How have you learned how to lead and also form your team? You immediately, when I asked you how you did it, you defaulted straight to your team. I only do this because I've got a great team, which I'm sure is true, but you've helped form that team and mold them to what they do by leading them well. So how have you learned how to lead and how to be great at what you do?
If I reflect back on 26 years in the Royal Air Force, people will know that whether you're in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, your ship, your regiment, your squadron, they're all really, really important. And people brigade behind the badge or the logo of that piece of the organization. But here's the rub. That organization is subordinate to the mission, and everybody is focused on the mission, whether that's delivering air power, delivering sea power, or the like. And I think that's where we slightly get it wrong in the public sector, the broader public sector, because we brigade around our organization. We're passionate, rightly so, about our organization. For me, whether that's Broadland Council or whether that's South Norfolk Council. And those things are useful tools, but they're useful tools to the extent that they're subordinate to the mission that the broader public sector is seeking to deliver. And I think when you get that right, it's really, really smart. We have it inside our own organizations. So my directors are passionate about what their directorate delivers, but only to the extent that it adds to the totality of what the council is delivering. And then you scale that up to what we deliver with health or what we deliver with the police, et cetera, et cetera. So organizations are important because they give people a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. But they become frustrating if that becomes the end state. The end state is what's the mission we're trying to deliver, and our organization is a key but subordinate part of that.
And therefore, just then turning that into a broader public sector organization, your role, I assume, is therefore finding other partners and getting the ingredients right to make sure that's aligned with all parts of the public sector domain, isn't it? And I know the private sector and everything else. So just picking on the public sector for a second. And then when you come up against other organizations that perhaps don't think like you're describing, which is outcomes, mission, purpose, not organizations, How do you influence that as a local authority leader of organizations? What's your approach?
So the first thing is really to kind of insist that you leave your ego and your logo at the door, because they're both disruptive when you're trying to work in partnership to move things forward. Also recognize that, what's that saying? Success has many fathers, failure is an orphan. Share the kudos. Absolutely be really, really pleased when other people are very, very successful. And if you played some small part in that success, well, fantastic. If you played a big part in that success, but they're the one on the stage taking the kudos, just focus on the success that you've collectively delivered and bring all of your energy and drive to the table to make sure that that collaboration works. We can all take, you take the reorganization agenda that's going on now. We could all take a stance in a position where we pull it apart. It's really, really easy. The harder stuff is to work in partnership with colleagues to make sure it's a success, which plays into that bit that organizations aren't actually that important. It's the human interaction and the relationships that we build through partnerships or formal engagement that make things deliver and make things happen. It's not organizational structures.
And I think that's really key, isn't it? As we go forward, I think that's exceptionally true in the NHS, where we're very good. I even hear people still use the word sovereign. I'm a sovereign organisation. It's like, no, you're not. Actually, you're a public benefit organisation for local residents. And your point is, let's talk about our having very permeable boundaries and actually say, where's the jointness, not our distinctive separateness.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the public expect. They don't expect an array of different organizations to deal with the problem that they've got. They're looking to the public sector in general for a solution. And there's a real complexity in the stuff that we deliver. So when someone goes through a bereavement, and I found the same when I lost a parent, or indeed when one of my family was a service user around mental health, trying to navigate our system is really, really hard, really, really hard at a time when people need it to be simple. Well, our leadership responsibility is to make the complex simple rather than make the simple more complex for people. And we do that through working in collaborative, open partnerships.
So I could talk to you for ages, and I will have to pull us to some kind of conclusion. I wonder if I could ask you at the end then to focus on those that might be listening who are starting their leadership journey. I think they can hear from you your optimism, your drive, and all of the things that you can see are going to be coming up that are opportunities for changing. What would you say to someone starting their leadership career? What would you advise them to pay attention to and do above all other things as they start, whether they're in local government or in healthcare?
So first off, when I had a Christian upbringing, and my basis and drivers are those Christian value sets, but also aided and abetted by Rudyard Kipling's If. And I would say to anybody setting out on their journey, go and read Rudyard Kipling's If, and just see how true that is today. I'd say look for the opportunities that are going ahead. There are massive, massive opportunities in changes in the health service, changes in the delivery of social care, changes in local government. Look for those opportunities and exploit them. Exploit them not for personal gain, but exploit them for making a difference to what we deliver. And if in your mind, actually, you're a leader that is absolutely determined to make a difference, your career will go as far as you want it to go. In the public sector, and your opportunity to make a difference further and further across a broader scheme of opportunity will just grow. But make sure your drive is a good one, and the driver is to make a difference for the people that we serve and empower the people that work for you, giving them a responsibility to lead. You will be amazed at the results.
And that clearly is about defining your identity in making a difference, not your identity in personal success, of course.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I started with, I thought I'd done all the fun things in the RAF. Local government is so rewarding and so much fun. And it's so much fun because of the people we get to work with, whether that's in my organisation, colleagues in health, colleagues at the county council, colleagues in policing. We've got a really good bunch of people who genuinely want to make a difference. Our job as leaders is to create the environment where they can make that difference.
Well, Trevor, you've given a fascinating insight into the Holden career in the Royal Air Force, into being chief executives and leading complex organizations. You've talked about that privilege. You've talked about being really clear, really be honest, about the localism being important. I think everybody will have heard absolutely hammered through there about don't be hung up about organizations, be worried. I think the word you are, but there are places where resources are degraded. Have I said that right? Degraded.
Yeah,
degraded to deliver something, not anything, not, something in their own right. And actually that insatiable desire to make a difference in the people that we serve and that we're here to serve as public servants. I think, Trevor, that would be good messages in any part of the public domain, wouldn't it, in that respect? I think that's universal to every single sector.
Yeah, I think we're going through a period of change, and some would say the only constant is change. It is a huge privilege for anybody who is starting out on their public sector leadership journey, or whether you're like me and that you're probably, as they say, your future's behind you. There has never been a better time to be in public leadership and the potential to really make a difference.
Trevor Holden, thank you so much for joining me on Leadership and Culture in Healthcare with a fascinating insight into leadership in local government. It's been a delight. Thank you so much.